Okay,
they
good
like
morning,
the Shabbos
everybody.
review, but
Good
when
morning.
we had to sit
in the
Boker
shul.
Tov. Welcome, everybody. I hope you can see that I'm back from the Kinnis. Excited, exhilarated, totally exhilarated. There's so much we're going to talk about today, so get ready. Because as I was mentioning before, that Tanya is all about application. So it's nice to sit in week after week after week and learn about the Nefesh Elokis and the Nefesh Bahamis, and then it's just in theory, but how do we practically live the Tanya? Isn't that what it's all about? Mm-hmm. We can talk all about sensitivity to, the indigenous people, and then we walk outside, we're not very, very, very sensitive to them. So what good was that whole conversation? So, good morning, Becky. Maybe one year you'll come and join us at the Kinnis. There were a lot of Israelis there, by the way. A lot of Israelis and a lot of French. It was unbelievable. So, good morning, Chava. So we are super excited. Good morning, Rosalie. Good morning, Shirley. Good morning, Chava. Good morning, Rivka. Good morning, Nicole. When are we going to call you? Chana Liba? No? Not yet. Good morning, Joanne. Good morning, Shelley. So this is wonderful. We're going to start off our Tanya class. Good morning, Kim. Good morning, Joanne. Good morning, Helga. Good morning, Esther. It's great to see everyone. By the way, just give me a thumbs up if you're having an amazing day today so far. All right? Sun is shining. It's 6 degrees, maybe going up to 9. Haidu Hashem Kitov. How much more thankful could we be to Hashem?
I did my facial in the wrong time and I can't be next to the sun.
So yeah, today's a sunny day. So I hope everyone's having a beautiful, glorious day. It's good to see you, Shelley, back here again. So if you have tzedakah, we'll pass it around. And give tzedakah. You can make a coffee if you would like. For those of you who are watching online, make yourself a coffee as well. So I mentioned to you that this past Shabbat, I was at the Kinnis in New York with 3,500 of my best friends. And I'm seriously, these are soulmates because we are all there doing the same thing. We're all in the same job. For people who are selling Arbonne, when they get together, they're like buds because they're all selling a product. 3,500, and that's really that. 1,500 were not even there because they were either pregnant or just gave birth. 3,500 there celebrating what we do, who we are. We are Shluchim of the Rebbe, and yesterday was Chav Beis Shvat, it was the Rebbetzins Yortzeit. So we always have the Kinus that weekend. And why that weekend? Because the Rebbetzin, Chaimushka, didn't have children. Who were her children? Jewish girls, Jewish women, Jewish daughters. Because she didn't have physical children, her children, are living her legacy. Which means that the living will take to heart who she was and live on her message. And so we heard incredible stories the whole weekend about Chaimushka, and as the Rebbe's wife, you can imagine she wasn't just a regular Chabad woman. But if something interesting last night at the table, my husband and I were talking. It wasn't last night at the table. We were meeting with another incredible couple, Shluchim here in the city, Rabbi Mendel and Toby Bernstein. And because we both started Tamim Academy, so we were having a school meeting, and we were talking about what was the greatness of the Rebbetzin. I have to tell you that for the years I lived in New York, I never saw her once. The Rebbe, we saw every single day if we wanted, when you went to 770. The Rebbe is the most public figure. In fact, they say after the President of the United States in America, the Rebbe gets the most mail. Think about this.
Oh, wow.
So the Rebbe was very public. But who was Rebbetzin Chaimushka? She seemed to be a very private person, very, very modest, inward person. So was she something special? Well, clearly, she was. If this is who the Rebbe chose to be his soulmate, right? If this is the Rebbe's wife, so you could see that she was something special. But we were talking about the most important junctures in Chabad history, which really means world history, because all of the shluchim are surrounded in the world and making impressions around the world to millions of people. Okay, if the Rebbe was going to become Rebbe, who made that decision? It was the Rebbetzin. She said these famous words: if you don't take over my father's position, what's going to happen to Chassidus? She encouraged her to become Rebbe. That's number one. Number two, the whole story with the books that were taken. And at that moment, at the court case, we spoke about it in one of the classes, at the court case where there was a total moment of transition. Does the books, the holy books of the previous Rebbes, does it go to the Rebbe, or does it go back to that nephew who claimed he was the heir? The Rebbetzin was interviewed by the prosecutors. And she said, they asked her the question, are the books the Rebbe's books, or are they books that belong to the family, the Schneerson family? Which means, who gets it? The youngest grandchild. And the Rebbetzin said these words. She's so brilliant. She says, the books belong to the Rebbe because the Rebbe belongs to Chassidim. So because the Rebbe belongs to the Chassidim, everything that the Rebbe owns belongs to the Chassidim. And the judge was floored, and the books were given back to the Rebbe. So many sort of junctures in Chabad, the Rebbetzin made little remark, and that so changed the whole paradigm. So we celebrated the Rebbetzin. One of the speakers, did any of you click in to watch? Mm-hmm. Were you blown away by one of the most incredible? Did anybody here watch the Kinnis? If you did, let me know. Who blew you away?
I think the Rebbetzin from Ukraine.
Ah, the Rebbetzin from Ukraine.
And then also the one from, I don't remember her name. It was Chaya Brookins' friend.
Oh, she was not there that night. You watched her that night, Saturday?
Yeah, she was,
She was Motzei Shabbat.
Yes.
The one from Rostov.
Yeah.
Yes, right. Yes, Laura, you watched it?
Oh,
Sivan Meir, and the Israeli, the reporter.
Yes.
So I met this reporter a few years ago when we were in Israel. We took a group of Chabad Markham, I don't know if you remember, many years we went to Poland and Israel. So Shabbat lunch we had with Sivan Meir and her husband, because she lives in my brother's condo. He invited her, and she wrote, they did a whole full-page report in the Jerusalem Post about our trip and about Chabad in general. So she blew me away, not only with her presentation, the way she speaks, she's very dramatic and smart and on the ball, but her message. So there are a few things that I really wanted to talk about today that really blew me away from in general. I mean, not everything that was at the Kinnis. Remember, the Kinnis started Thursday morning. It ended Monday. Wow. What did they do on Monday? On Monday, they all went to the Ohel to see Rebbetzin Chaimushka. Everybody went to see her. You know, for those of you who have parents that you lost, or grandparents, you know that going to the cemetery is very, 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 very emotional and very, very important. Because you're connecting with a parent or grandparent who's gone, and they're expecting you to live on with their message. Rebbetzin Chaimushka had no children. Who visits the Rebbetzins Ohel? Who visits her graveside? Her children. Her children. And if you go to her very humble stone, I don't know if you've been there, people actually bring letters. They leave invitations right there at her space. Because there was actually an anecdote where someone once brought a letter to the Rebbetzin and said, can you pass this on to the Rebbe? I need a blessing. And the Rebbe said to that person, the Rebbetzin could give brachas. The Rebbetzin is equally as powerful to give blessings. So I know whenever I go to the Rebbe's Ohel, I just make a straight beeline to the Rebbetzin. I daven by her as well, and then I leave. She was a granddaughter of the previous Rebbe, a great-granddaughter of all the Rebbes, so she herself was a Schneerson. And she married the Rebbe. So clearly there's a lot of energy and a lot of power. So what was it that was so inspirational? I want to share something that that really, really inspired me, because it's a Tanya class. And what's a Tanya class? A Tanya class is teaching us tools how to live our life in a very physical reality. We have to walk outside and see the world on a different plane. So it's not we're just typical human beings, and we happen to be Jewish. We walk out of our house every day, even if we're doing carpool, even if we're taking out the garbage, if we're going our routine shopping. We are different people. And it's very hard to wrap your head around that, but it happens slowly. There's like this metamorphosis that takes place. As we learn Torah, as we learn Chassidus, we evolve. And we actually walk out of our house different people. So what can really irritate us normally, it stops irritating us because you see it through the eyes of the Tanya. You see it through the eyes of Hashem. Yeah, this happened, but it was meant to be. And throughout the Kiddush, there were powerful stories of Hashgacha Pratis, of women who are struggling. Because you have to remember, the Shluchos are like me and you. Well, I am a Shlucha, but we're like each other. We're typical feminine beings. But Chassidus is transforming us. So when I look at women, like one of the women that Sivan Meir talks about, the woman, let's say from Thailand, Sarah Goldschmidt, right? She leads the largest Seder in the world. How many people in that Seder? Take a guess, Shelley. I know you heard. Take a guess. How many people could be the largest people? How many people can a shlucha and a shliach already take care of?
100.
100. That's very... 2,500 young, and most of them are Israeli backpackers.
Wow.
Coming for Pesach because they're backpacking. Most of them are soldiers who've just finished the army, who are struggling with PTSD, who need a year off to be able to internalize what they just saw. So much chaos, losing friends. And they're taking that year to backpack. And where do they come to rejuvenate? B'hashgacha pratis, they come to Chabad. Why? Because the Rebbe in Brooklyn, New York, foresaw that there are going to be thousands and thousands of young Israelis who are lost, who need guidance, who need a love, who need a hug. And the Rebbe said to his shliach, you leave your comfy home in Kfar Chabad. Most of them are Israelis, the shluchim. Leave your comfort in Kfar Chabad, where there's a restaurant and a grocery store and a school, and go on my behalf and make a home for these Israeli young students, these soldiers, because they're 19, 20, and make them a Seder so that they will feel your embrace. The Rebbe should care about them. I'm going to go off on a tangent here for a second. There was a young man, not a Chabad guy, that was sitting at a gathering, and next to him was a rabbi, a Chabad rabbi. And he said to him, you know, my cousin does business in Jamaica. And every time he goes to do business in Jamaica, he looks out for the Jewish community. And this is before there was Chabad there. He looks out for the Jewish community and he likes to give support to the local, whatever's going on locally. And when I come back, I always go to the Lubavitcher Rebbe and I give him the report about the Jews in Jamaica. So this rabbi says to him, it was actually Rabbi Sheistaub. So he says to him, but you're not Chabad. Why do you report to the Lubavitcher Rebbe what's going on? He says, who else would care? Who else would care? This is a non-Chabad guy who does business in Jamaica, but he knows the only address that cares about every single Jew is the Rebbe. So not Chabad, he walks over to the Rebbe and says to the Rebbe, I want you to know what's going on in Jamaica for Jews. So the Rebbe cares. And this is really what the whole celebration of Chaf B'Shvat, the whole weekend was about how the Rebbe cares, and the Rebbe was sending us to be his hands and feet. So this young woman by the name of Sarah Goldschmidt moves with her family and makes this magnificent Seder. Sivan Meir Ra'av, as a journalist, is meeting with this Chabad Rebbetzin. And she wanted to come over after the Seder to congratulate her and tell her how amazing what she's doing, right? You would think, whoa, in the Chabad world, this couple is the most amazing couple. Why? Because they're running a Seder for 2,500 people. But she couldn't get hold of her that night. You know why? Because that night she had to take one woman to the mikveh.
Oh, yes.
And that is equally as important as 2,500 guests at your Seder. So the spotlight at the banquet was on this Shluchos, Sarah Goldschmidt, this young, gorgeous Israeli Chabad Shlucha, sitting there so humbly. You would walk in the street, you wouldn't even realize this is a powerhouse, right? But she, in her mind, because she's taught by the Rebbe, that 2,500 is important, and so is one woman who has to go to the mikveh. To know that the Rabbim and the Yachid are equally important. So that was one story that blew her away. Then she talks about the Shlucha in Ukraine, whose name is Chana Segal. Now, I have to tell you what was the most incredible part of the kinus was that most of the Ukrainian Shluchos were there. Now, who are these Ukrainian Shluchos? These are women that had to leave communities, buildings, real estate that is full of orphanages, high schools, preschools, day schools, millions of dollars worth of magnificent real estate that is servicing their communities in every little city in Ukraine. And many of those women left. They left their candlesticks. They left their furniture. They left their clothing. They had to get into their cars and travel 26 hours through bombs, through checkpoints, with probably 8 or 9 or 10 children in the back seat, and they only had room for what? Food, because they had to have food for 26 hours, Pampers, wipes, and clothing for the next day. That's how they ran from their, because the bombings were coming right on their communities. Many of them started Chabad communities in Europe where their community members ran. So now they're starting brand new in Germany, in Poland, in Warsaw, in different Prague, in different places. Because the Chabad Shluchim there said, come on in. Together, I will take care of my community, and I'm going to give you space to bring in your community. Wow. Do you see what's going on? Do you see what's going on? Imagine for a second if in 1940 there were shluchim all over the world that would have taken in the Jews that were running from Hitler, Yamach Shemam. The Rebbe is a survivor. When the Rebbe came to America in 1940, he said, and then it became a Rebbe in 1941, he said, the Jews are never going to be scapegoats and sheep again. We are going to give the Jews the backbone, the confidence they need, that wherever they go, there's a Jew waiting for you with an open door. My Zaydi came to America with nothing on his back. An orphan, like millions of others. The Rebbe said, I'm not going to let that happen under my watch. There's going to be a shliach in any crazy little place. In fact, when they did the roll call, they announced countries and cities that I can't even pronounce.
I never
Such
heard of in my life.
Crazy places. We were joking on the way home from the banquet. I was sitting next to my sister-in-law. I said, nobody in the world knows geography like Chabad kids.
Yeah.
Because you say, who lives in Changwon-do? Oh, that's the Goldstein family. Who lives in Shanghai? Oh, that's the Greenberg family. Who lives in New Zealand? Oh, that's this family. Everybody knows a name of a city or a country in crazy far forsaken places because, hey, my cousin's brother lives there. It's not.
Travelers go to these places?
Of course.
Yeah?
Of course.
Are there a lot of Jews in these places?
Yeah. They go to a place where there's enough Jews
Right,
that warrant a
otherwise they
Chabad
can't.
house, right? But today there's Jews everywhere, and I have to say most of the people that are settling are Israelis. In fact, there was a time, if you remember, when Gabi Holtzberg was murdered with his beautiful wife, Rivki, the Israeli embassy put together a whole sort of a fund that they said, I don't even know if it happened in the end, but they said, we are going to start funding Chabad in these places because they're taking care of our citizens. Right? Who else is taking care? You, as an Israeli embassy, have to take care of your Israelis. Well, Chabad's there, we're going to help you. Good morning, Mandy. Good morning, Leslie. Good morning. Great to see you. Good morning, Kim. Good morning, Jesse. And good morning, Denise. So the reality is that these women and their husbands, I have to tell you on a side note, it was so funny. So on Friday, you might have seen I posted taking pictures. They was taking pictures of the shluchos.
Yeah.
And they set up in front of 770 bleachers. And then there are about 3,000 women for the picture. So they have a drone that takes a picture from all angles. And they have this guy on a big razor that he takes the pictures all around. So it takes about an hour to get all the shluchos standing together. And then as he's about to snap, he says, you know the saying, behind every great leader, there is a husband.
Oh.
The laughter and the applaud was really hilarious. Because normally you say, what do you say? Behind every great leader, there's a great woman. But this guy got it right. Behind every great leader, and he looked at those leaders and he goes, there's a husband. The husband's taking care of the kids. Yeah. It was just like, this was like, I remember, there was like 4 days of this empowering, because women, the husbands were like falling apart on Shabbos. I don't know what was going on in Chabad houses, but in the homes where they were taking care of the kids.
I saw it too.
You saw it too?
Our rabbi had 2 little ones and he couldn't take it.
They couldn't take it, they were wearing the wrong
Like,
shoes.
Here, feed him.
So you saw it firsthand. It's amazing. Okay, so then he talks about this Chana Segel. So this Chana Segel lives in Ukraine, and I don't have down exactly which city she's in. Oh, Kharkov. And Kharkov. And because of the bombs that were coming down, Erev Shabbat in her community, they were told by the head shliach, you have to leave. You and your children must leave. But it was Erev Shabbos. That means they were going to be 26 hours in the car over Shabbat. But we all know that are you allowed to break Shabbat? For pikuach nefesh. If life is at stake, you must break Shabbat, not at your allowed. You must, it's a mitzvah to breaking Shabbat, because that's pikuach nefesh. So this beautiful, gorgeous Chana Segel, a young mother with all her children, packing up her whole life in these suitcases, sends a message. And she says, to my dear friends, I won't be able to ben shlich this Shabbos because I am in a car. I'm actually getting the chills right now. She says, I'm asking you to do me a favor. Can you light Shabbat candles for me? If you never light Shabbos candles, can you light it for me tonight? Because I can't. Sivan Meir sent that out, and so did many and many of us. Millions of women, specifically secular women, saw this, and they lit Shabbos candles that Friday night because of Chani. And people were sending back messages, of course, I'll start lighting candles in your honor. It's funny because the next week someone sent a message and said, so is Chani safe? Do I still have to light a candle for her this Friday night? Clearly, of course, Shabbos candles is for every woman all the time. But this was a hero. This is a woman who knew that at this point we have to leave, and many of these shluchos are back now in Ukraine with their families. There was one shlucha that spoke, and she said, I really don't want to leave. And he goes, I'm making a protest. I don't want to leave. I know there's bombs outside, but I'm not leaving my shluchas, a 12-year-old boy. I am not leaving my shluchas. And the parents said, listen, Zizkai, you have to go, and we will come back. And they did come back, and many places are sort of recouping again. Then she has another story. Leah Haddad. Now, Leah Haddad is a shliach's daughter from Brussels. She married my cousin, Levi Tuchman, who is the shliach where? In Dubai. And at this wedding, which took place a few months ago, you see videos of Levi, who's the shliach in Dubai, dancing with the sheiks. And they're wearing their whole garb. And they're dancing to Avram Fried, because Avram Fried was flown in. So Siva Meir says, where and when it was, did you ever see the sheiks? Is it a sheik or a sheikh? A sheikh? A sheikhs. When did you ever see a sheikh, Arab sheikhs, in full garb, dancing with Chabad rabbi, a shliach, to Avram Fried. She says because of the Abraham Accords, they were dancing to Abraham Fried. Like amazing what's going on. And now this young couple are full-time shluchim in Dubai, taking care of the people that are there. And then she shared the fourth story. This is a story about a young couple who lives in China. Now during COVID, and still today, it was what a Chabad shlucha from China was talking about today, what's going on there. There's still crazy lockdown, terrible lockdown. Who spoke? Oh my gosh. A shlucha that was born in Hong Kong. Now Hong Kong is now under China. This shlucha, oh my gosh, you have to watch this. Go to Chabad.org and this week and just watch the kinnis. This young shlucha, who looks like a model, tall, blonde, stunning, okay? She's a Chabad shlucha. She's now married and on shluchas in Hong Kong. Now you would think to yourself, if you were raised by parents in a crazy place, you probably hated it. I have to live in Hong Kong when all my friends are having a great time in New York and in Israel. When I get married or when I get older, I'm getting out of this crazy gullus. I'm going to live a normal life. I'm going to marry a guy. We're going to go in business. We're going to travel. My whole life was stuck in Hong Kong. I had to go to school online. I didn't have friends. No, what does this girl do? She gets married and moves back with her husband to Hong Kong to start her own community in Hong Kong. You know, the biggest nachas for my husband and myself, I have to tell you, is that all my children, except for one, are shluchim today. They got married and chose to go on shluchas. You would think, you know, you are shluchas. You know, maybe you want to just live somewhere else, live in Manhattan, go somewhere, live in Florida, go into business, be very comfortable. You know, a shliach. I mean, we're not the richest people in the world. Wouldn't you? But my children loved being on shluchas. They are so empowered. So you have Chayil is in Toronto, and Basi's in Pittsburgh, and Mati's in Florida. Her husband and her are on shluchas, right? He's a mashpia. Levi's on shluchas, running the camp to see kids. Mendy's on shluchas in Dallas. Shomber is Metz Hashem now. Well, he now is Mayinot on shluchas, and in Metz Hashem he'll get married and move on shluchas. What is it telling our children? What are our children telling us? We love the life of shluchas. So here's this family. They are on shluchas in China, and it's during COVID. And there was a kinnis for all, I don't know if you know this, but simultaneously, while the mothers are having their banquet, there are 1,000 little girls are having the kinnis at the same time. These are kids that are 8 to 12 years old. So these are not all the shluchim's kids. These are just 8 to 12-year-olds, 1,000 of them who come with their mothers. My granddaughter Musya was there at the kinnis. She was first year, 9 years old, independent. I bumped into her on Shabbos because I was going to a class reunion, and Musya is walking with a group of 15 little girls her age. They were spending Shabbos together, all these little girls on shluchas. These little girls are so proud. But last year, during the COVID lockdown, this family, their last name is Hennig. The husband's name is Chana. So the two little girls, Chana and Musya, are 6 and 8 year olds. And normally they would have flown in to the kinnis with their mother. But it was the COVID. They couldn't leave. So at the convention where all these little girls were standing, the shliach said, and let's give a round of applause to the lonely shluchim who are stuck because of COVID. Little girls, Chana and Musya, turn to their tati and they go, isn't that sad? There are some shluchos that live in faraway places and they're very lonely. Not thinking that the guy was talking about them in a small little city in China where they have no school, they have no kids their age, and they're thinking, oh, there are some shluchos that are lonely. The father burst into tears. And all he could say later on was, my children love their shluchos so much, they don't even think that he was talking about them. That they have such joy and such pride in being shluchim. My friends, we talk about Tanya. What is Tanya? This is Tanya. Chani is Tanya. Chana and Musya are Tanya. Leah is Tanya. Sarah Goldschmidt is Tanya. These women are walking Tanyas. I don't have to open a Tanya today. The last 4 days, I was living Tanya. I was living Nefesh Elokis. I was living women who have a Nefesh Bahamas that's been erased. We talk about what's a tzaddik? A tzaddik that doesn't struggle with a Nefesh Bahamas. Little Chana and Musya from China, they have a Nefesh Bahamas. They don't even know what a Nefesh Bahamas is. You ask them, they tell you they're the regular girls struggling. But I'm telling you that these women are tzidkaniyot. These women are the most righteous women. When Rabbi Kotlarsky, who runs the kinnis, he's the head of the whole kinnis, he stands up and he gives greetings every year, and he was saying that we're told by the Torah tells us, "B'schus nashim tzidkaniyot nigalu avatenu." You should know that by heart. Repeat after me. B'schut nashim tzidkaniyot, because of the righteous women, nigalu avatenu mitzrayim, our forefathers were redeemed from where? Mitzrayim. And what does Rashi add? U'ba'atidin, and in the future, who is going to redeem us from Egypt? Our Golos? The Jewish women. This was the message of the entire Kinnos. Women, you rock, you're holding the world, and each one of us must know that if Mashiach is going to come, it's going to be because of what we are doing with our children. They were dependent on the women then, they are dependent on us now. My friend who's on Shluchot in British Columbia, Surrey. You know where Surrey is? Yeah. Surrey. My friend's a Shluchot there. So she was at the Kinnis. We spent time together. She's one of my very dear friends, Simi Strux. Her husband wrote a very, 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 very beautiful article. And one of the things that he wrote was something very, very powerful. He says, when our grandparents were stuck either in Siberia or they were stuck in the camps, and they were saying, how could we celebrate Pesach? We're stuck in Golos. So the Frierdiker Rebbe responded to his Chassidim, and he said, one of the things that we learned from Egypt is this: Mitzrayim had bavizin as meken arois. And I'll translate that. The Golos of Mitzrayim taught us that we can get out of any dominating, crushing clutches. We did it then, we can do it again. I never heard this before, but I think it's something we have to all remember. We are in Golos now, but if Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim because of the women then, Hashem could do it now. So women, this is a huge responsibility. The world is relying on us. This is how I came out of the kinnis. In fact, we came back from the kinnis around 11 o'clock at night, and then by 3:30 in the morning, I was on my way to the airport. So if I look tired, it's because I really didn't catch up on my sleep. I had an early flight because I had to get back to Torah 9 o'clock in the morning. I wanted to be here to greet the mothers. The world is waiting for us, and we could think, I'm just a woman. I'm just a regular housewife. What am I going to do? But the Geula then, in the days of Mitzrayim, came because of the women. And what did they do? One of the main things they did. They brought children into the world. B, they raised their children. They raised those children. Like you mentioned, the shliach, he didn't know what to do because his wife was away. The women raised the kids.
He was overwhelmed.
How do we raise our children? What words are we using to our children? What songs are we singing to our children? What stories are we telling our children? What stories are they going to sleep to at night? Are they going to sleep at night to a Robert Munch, one of those silly, with all due respect to Robert Munch, but with all the silly stories that have no messages? Or are we filling our children's libraries with holy books, books of messages, of Mesirat Nefesh, of joy, of forgiveness, of love, of respect, right? What kind of books are our children hearing? Okay? So that's number one. What are our children being fed? What's the kashrut, right? We are responsible for feeding the children who are going to greet Mashiach. What are they eating? We know that when Moshe was taken out of the basket by Batya and he was crying because he was hungry, she gave him an Egyptian wet nurse. And Moshe, as a baby, a few days old, refused to nurse from that non-Jewish woman. Why? Anybody know why? Yeah, but why? What was
nothing non-kosher going inside of him?
Because what was the future of Moshe? He was going to speak to Hashem. He was going to take a boy that was going to grow up to be the Mashiach of Mitzrayim cannot have any non-kosher food in his body.
But then he ate non-kosher the rest of his life.
Well, apparently he did not. Because we're told that Moshe never let anything not kosher in his mouth. So Moshe must have been, first of all, the first year, Yocheved took care of him. Mm-hmm. And then after that, for that year, or maybe it was 2 years, for as long as she nursed him, she taught him, you are a Jew, and she told him all the mitzvahs. And so she must have said to him, you are only allowed to eat kosher.
But back then, it wasn't the shchita and everything.
It wasn't, right? So what kind of food? Whatever they ate. Whatever Moshe was allowed to eat, he ate. He wouldn't eat pig. He wouldn't eat anything that his father, Amram, or his mother, Yocheved, wouldn't have eaten. Because he had to face Hashem, the one and only person that ever did, right? Face to face. He had to be pure. Think about our children. Our children are going to greet Mashiach. What kind of children are we going to bring to bring Mashiach? What are our kids into? What are they reading? What are they eating? Right? So this is the mother's power. So this responsibility is ours. And this was one of the greatest messages I came back with the kids. So I want to wish all of us that are watching now, and all of you that are here, that we have a massive responsibility. And the world is watching us and waiting to see what we women are going to do and how we are going to usher in. So this is the 4 stories that I brought down that blew me away. But then, after she spoke about these great women, and let me give you the punchline. She spoke about the women that make a big program for 50 of their community members, and only 7 show up. And they don't give up. She spoke about women who have a preschool, and then people start leaving the city, and this preschool that had 20 kids now have 2. She doesn't give up on those 2 kids. You're listening to this. Because the kidness is all about success. But then she said, no. Who are we really celebrating? The woman that's struggling with mental wellness. The woman that's struggling with a child who's throwing up a whole night. The woman who's trying to make a big school and only 2 children show up. These are the things that we have to celebrate. I thought after she said that, she got the biggest round of applause. Because that's what it is. We have to realize we're not all the greatest. We're not all Chana Segel making 2,500 people at a Seder. But if we invite 2 guests, that's also beautiful. We take 1 woman to the mikveh, that's also beautiful. So I want to wish you all an amazing day. And we have to go out there and conquer the world.
I wanted to ask you something. Because with all the